back to the efforts that we worked with DuPont early on, up in their laboratories in Wilmington, and the scientists that work there, Benke, who's still around but not very in his retired age, but Wally was the big testing person, for lack of a better word, that we worked with for a number of years. And the biggest issue was thermal protection. We started the NFPA standard after the Harvey UTEC spec came out in the first standard by measuring the thickness, 175 mils, that's how thick your turnout goes. Why? We don't know why at that time, but again, we moved into actual performance issues and said, hey, we want to protect a person from being burned up to second-degree burns in a flashover environment, and actually came out with this new test, TPP, which everybody knows about today, but it was a big hurdle and a big battle and a big laboratory issue to get through that particular process. But we did so. And we did so in terms of defining the environment at the same time. Back in the early 80s, and again, the infancy of the NFPA process, we actually went out and did a research project, which is important to remember because people are talking about this today. The group, the committee, again, 20 of us, I guess, that were around at that time, and we talked about, let's look at the gear out there. We went to 20, 25 different cities and pulled current turnout gear, gave them a new set of gear for it, and stuff that was in lockers or storage, and actually did a test. It was the first time we actually looked at turnout gear and to try to decide or to decipher the environment that firefighters were working in, and we did so. We pulled all this gear in. It was the NFPA research project. It was headed by Ben, the president of Carnes & Brother, a gentleman named Chris Coombs, and certainly with the entire committee. We photographed it, we looked at it, we tested it, we worked in DuPont's labs up in Wilmington, we looked at tear strength, we looked at heat, but most importantly, we decided and we defined, the environment that firefighters work with. And because of lack of time, I'm only going to give you one example. With that work effort, we came out with the 500-degree oven test. What does the 500-degree oven test have to do with the fire environment? Nothing. It had nothing to do with firefighters working in 500-degree Fahrenheit heat. Firefighters work in 500-degree heat, they work in 100-degree heat, they work in 1,000-degree heat, they work all over the map. But what that project did is it gave us clothing that was damaged. And we took that clothing, we went to the laboratories, and we tested it. And we made the material fail, and when it failed, we were able to describe the test method that was to be utilized. And again, it came out to be 500 degrees. Would it have been 600 degrees? Perhaps. Would it have been 700 degrees? Perhaps. But it was 500 degrees. I hear over and over and over again, people say, well, you know, we're in 500 degrees, we're dead. Well, perhaps you are, perhaps you're not. But again, we used that project in the early 80s to actually define the environment that firefighters work in. So when you look at test methods, when you sit there with the NFPA standard, or the ANSI standards, or the ISO standards, or whoever standards, and you see these temperatures or tears or whatever, it doesn't relate directly to the environment you work in. It relates to the clothing that you're wearing. And again, we test clothing for failure. We decide on a level to do the environmental test, and we've done so. And that was done early on in this particular project. We had a number of issues when we moved from actual protection of firefighters into more comfort of firefighters, which in fact was a health and safety issue. Our sweating hot plate standard that we worked on for decades, well, it seemed decades, but many years, is now in the standard. We spent lots of time doing that. And again, for the betterment of the firefighters. One of the big earliest issues we had when we talked about the comfort levels and the physiological stress of clothing was, well, you know, it is what it is. We can't get any better than that. Well, you know what? We fought that. We fought that against ourselves, and this was just not the manufacturers, it was also the fire service. We fought amongst ourselves, and we made a better standard out of it looking at those issues.